The Huawei Mate 20 Pro is one of the biggest Android flagships of the year. This phone does a lot of things, and it's really good at many of them. And look, for upwards of €1,000, you'd certainly hope so. So far I've been using pre-release firmware, so we're going to give it a little longer before publishing our full review. In the meantime, I wanted to offer up this video as kind of a part 1 of the review, having used this as a daily driver since the day it was announced. So here goes, the top 5 things, both good and bad, to take away from almost 2 weeks with the Huawei Mate 20 Pro. In case you missed my fawning over the Mate 20 Pro's design in our hands-on video, let me just say it again, this is a beautiful phone, especially the twilight gradient which shifts colour dramatically depending on how the light hits it. What's also neat is how the metal trim has its own matching gradient pattern now, shifting from blue through purple down to black at the bottom. Plus the symmetry and curves of this design make it incredibly ergonomic and comfortable to use, unlike some competitors I could mention. I've also had fun playing with the hyper-optic patterned Mate 20 Pro at Huawei's launch event in London last week. If you want something that doesn't feel like a slippery, greasy glass smartphone, this could be the one to pick up. It comes in green and blue and has a subtle pattern etched into the surface of the glass itself for extra grip. My biggest reason for using the P20 Pro for as long as I did was its amazing triple camera setup. The Mate 20 Pro loses the monochrome lens from that trio in favour of an ultra-wide lens, and I think that was the right decision. The result of the change is a camera that's just as good, arguably better in fact, in standard and zoom shots, but now with the best implementation of ultra-wide that I've seen in any phone. That's because, unlike LG and others, Huawei's wide-angle camera uses autofocus, meaning it's more versatile and you can even use it to take macro shots if you like. Huawei's new triple camera setup gives it unprecedented versatility in the kind of shots you can take. Between 0.6x with a wide lens and 5x hybrid zoom, combining the telephoto and the main 40MP sensor, no other phone gives you the freedom to shoot at such a wide range of focal lengths. Huawei's excellent handheld long exposure mode from the P20 Pro is here too, but it's now supported on the wide-angle camera as well, meaning you can capture striking shots like this in very low light. It's a good counter to the fact that the ultra-wide unit doesn't suck in quite as much light as the main sensor, so it's not quite as capable in full auto. And video performance is significantly upgraded as well, with AI stabilization supported up to 4K resolution at 30 frames per second. Plus you can shoot at 4K across all 3 cameras now. Most of the time you want to stick to the main camera for video, but you can capture some really unique looking footage with the wide angle too. The only caveat, on this early software I've seen some artifacting around the edge of some frames when shooting stabilized 4K footage. I've also noticed that changing between the 3 lenses can be a little slow on this early firmware, and with the wide angle in particular there's often a bit of shutter lag to deal with. That's one of the many things we'll have to report back on once we have final firmware. This will come as absolutely no surprise if you're even remotely familiar with the Huawei Mate series. The Mate 20 Pro with its gigantic 4200mAh battery and the efficient new Kirin 980 CPU is a battery champion. The only time I came close to killing it off in one day is when I spent that entire day out in London shooting photo and video. Even on travel days, unless I'm taking a ton of photos, I found myself averaging around 6 hours of screen on time. And if you're in a less hostile network environment with plenty of bars, you'll easily push past that figure. That's improved further by the fact that top-up chargers are easier than ever. Qi wireless charging is included, and I've been topping off the Mate 20 Pro on my Pixel stand overnight. And if you do find yourself with only a short window to charge, the 2nd gen supercharging will quickly get you out of the danger zone. The box charger can supply up to 40 watts. To put that in perspective, OnePlus's Dash Charge puts out a mere 20 watts. So in our hands-on video with the Mate 20 Pro, I said Huawei was shipping the first really good in-screen fingerprint sensor. With the added perspective of a week or so of full-time use, I think I need to walk that back a little bit. Yes, it is very good, far better than what I used on the Mate RS over the summer, but in-screen fingerprint is still a compromise. It's not as fast or as easy to use or as reliable as a traditional capacitive sensor. Some of the friction here is the result of how in-screen fingerprint actually works. You need to press firmly on the screen with your finger or thumb right in the middle of the sensor to get it to work. If you try to use it like a capacitive fingerprint scanner on any other phone, you'll have a bad time. You can't expect to just brush a fingertip against the sensor like you can on a Pixel or a Galaxy phone. And for me, that's taken some getting used to because of the years of muscle memory I've built up. Fortunately though, Huawei's 3D Face Unlock is so good that it makes up for a lot of these compromises. That's because, like Apple's Face ID, it has its own infrared projector, so it works well even in really dark conditions. Huawei's EMUI has improved significantly in the latest release, which is now based on Android 9 Pie, but I do have a few nits to pick here, and mainly they have to do with task switching and the new gesture navigation system. Huawei's gesture nav looks pretty slick and well animated, but there are a couple of devilish details that have kept me from using it full time. First, it breaks picture-in-picture in YouTube and other apps. If you swipe up to go home, it actually hides the video, as opposed to shrinking it down like it should. Second, the gesture for back, a swipe inwards from either side bezel, makes hamburger menus in some apps almost impossible to use. So I've stuck with the old 3-button setup during most of my time with the Mate 20 Pro, but even that is afflicted by some animation weirdness when hopping between apps, where the menu is recentered around the previous app in a kind of confusing way. It's not all bad though. EMUI is fast with pleasing animations, and I've also really appreciated the new visuals Huawei has included to illustrate certain features. We'll have more to say on the software side, of course, in our full review. That's going to wrap up our first impressions after around a couple of weeks with the Huawei Mate 20 Pro. It's a very promising phone, potentially one of the very best of 2018, but we're going to need a software update and a little more time before we can deliver our final verdict. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our full review and more from other big Android launches coming soon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.